You, my friend, have just done a $1.5 million launch.
Yeah.
I am so incredibly excited to introduce you to Nici Sweaney.
I see it as a huge time for women to be able to really take up space in the market and in the world because they can make AI work for them rather than waiting for permission from other people.
AI powerhouse and my incredible client. Nici won Australian Female AI Leader of the Year and was featured on the Forbes Women list just last year. Within 6 months, while still working a full-time job and raising 4 kids, she'd hit 6 figures. Today, she's tracking past $2 million a year with no full-time employees and a 4-day work week. Nici and I started working together 6 months ago, and during that first 6-month period, Nici went on to have a $1.5 million launch from her membership program.
At that point in time, I was earning around $33,000 a year. I've had moments where I've had to fill up the car with exactly $10 while I wait for the Centrelink payment to come in. I had no intention of actually quitting my job 7 months in, even though I did 6 figures in the business in the first 6 months. So I asked my workplace, do you think I could travel less? Do you think maybe I could come up once a month and stay the whole week, but then work from home the rest of the time? And I thought that they would be willing to kind of work with that. And they just flat out said no. So I rang my boss that afternoon and I said, I'm sorry if your answer's no, I actually can't do this. And I quit. And then I had a full-blown panic attack.
Everything from her mindset leading up to that launch, the strategy that was used, the messaging, the marketing. In this 2-part series, you are going to hear all of it and more. I know you're going to love this episode. I'm so excited to be here doing this with you, and we have so many things to talk about and I almost don't know where to start.
It's a little bit like that.
Off camera just now, we were like, okay, we need to be very, very serious because we have many things that we need to cover, and we knew that the minute we came on air, we would not be serious. And I feel like that's just going to set the whole tone for the episode because everyone listening's like, we want serious information, but we don't want it delivered in a serious way.
Exactly. We have to deliver the facts to the people, but, try and keep a straight face.
Perfect. Okay. So first thing I really want to do in this episode. So let me just speak very briefly to why we're here, conversation we want to have right now. You, my friend, have just done a $1.5 million launch.
Yeah.
And
true story.
And we wanted to have a conversation to basically share all the pieces about it. Well, we have so much that we can talk about when it comes to this launch, from the build up of how it came to be. Obviously we started working together about 6 months ago, the process, the where you were, the way your business was at, and ultimately all of the pieces that went into this, because there's so much that for everyone that's listening, whether you're a coach, a consultant, knowing that you're likely in a season of wanting to scale in some way, there's so many pieces of this that people can take. So let's just start by setting the scene a little bit. If we go back to, we started working together 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Can you talk who you were before AI her way? I'd love some of that context before you came into the business.
It feels like such a long time ago. I kind of constantly joke that AI years are like dog years. When I'm like, I started this business 3 years ago, it feels like about 15 years ago because of the rate of change in my particular industry. But if we go back to Nici pre-AI her way, so I fell in love with learning. I went to university, did zoology and genetics. I loved doing field work, decided to stay and do my honours. Then I decided I still wanted to stay and not get a real job and not face the real life. So I enrolled in a PhD, did my PhD in conservation ecology, had to learn how to code, which brought me to tears so many times at that point in history. But eventually that led to someone overhearing that I could code, and I was hired as a consulting data scientist, and I was also still working in academia. So if we go back pre-AI her way, I had been working in academia for almost 17 years.
Yes.
Mind you, as a continuous casual academic, as anyone who's in academia will know is very, very prevalent in that particular industry. So I spent 17 years, I guess, kind of begging for my position every 6 months, reproving that I was worth hiring again, and also never, ever having job security. And this was through having 2 children and being a solo mum, and trying to make those ends meet between contracts at university, and then having another 2 children with my beautiful partner, and again, trying to prove my worth across each particular contract. So yeah, at this point in time, I'm in academia, I'm consulting on the side as a data scientist, and at that point in time, I was earning around $33,000 a year, right?
Oh, okay.
Not nothing, but pretty close to nothing for how much effort I put into it. I loved my work in academia. I put so much effort into it. People often talk to me about how busy I am now, but I'm like, oh, honey, the one and only time I've ever been actually diagnosed as stress is when I was in academia. Okay. So I put my heart and soul into it. But end of 2022, this thing was released, right? ChatGPT. I remember hearing about it on the news, I think it was, and I opened it way back then when it was brand new, November of 2022. And I just remember having this feeling like I just watched history happen. And, you know, my first thought was like, holy shit, this is huge. I wonder what I could do with it. Oh my God, I could do so much with it. But also this really cognizant feeling of fear that we've just invented something that's going to change humanity, right? And at that point in time, I remember I rushed into the bedroom. My partner, Tom, had already gone to bed because he was sick of waiting for me to finish playing with this new tool that I'd found, right? And I jumped on him and I shook him by the shoulders and I'm like, I'm going to teach people this. Like, everyone's going to need to know AI. It's going to change the way we work. I can do this because I'm in adult education. I have a data science background. I understand how the mechanics of it work. This is going to be my thing. Like, all the pieces fit into place. Now, that all sounds a bit like a fairy tale beginning of a business, but the next day on Instagram, I saw this guy post about how to use ChatGPT for your socials, right? His name's Brock Johnson. You might have heard of him. I actually met him at a conference, full circle moment. But I saw Brock Johnson post about using ChatGPT to write your socials. And in that moment, Ellie, I was like, oh, well, the idea's gone. He took it and I can't do it. I've missed the chance. And I remember crying to Tom, being like, I shouldn't have sat on it. I should have launched it yesterday. So silly. Now it's gone. I don't have an opportunity anymore. So I didn't do anything about it for 6 months. And I watched the world start using this tool. I was using it in my professional life, but I thought, there's no space for me. No one wants to hear from me. All the opportunities are gone. Why will I bother? And then I presented at an academic conference about how to use AI in teaching, and somebody approached me afterwards and said, oh, that was great. Do you do professional development in this? And having never done that before, I said, like, screw it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I was like, yes, I do.
How every good business starts.
Exactly. And that was the birth of AI Her Way. So yeah, the before me was really making ends meet, very passionate about what I did, very invested, but it was a very, very different life. I mean, when I was a single mum, I've had moments where I've had to just fill up the car with exactly $10 while I wait for the Centrelink payment to come in. Even when Tom and I were together, there was one Christmas where we literally were waiting on Christmas Eve for our tax return to come through to be able to afford the kids' Christmas presents. So I've never been totally hard done by, but I've very much lived a very different experience to what I'm in now.
When we first sat down in person together, gosh, like 4 months ago now, and you walked me through life beforehand, I just sat there with like tears streaming down my face because you talked through, when you had it was, you know, you being a single mom with your first 2 kids and obviously now having 4 kids and your beautiful partner, Tom. And I was saying to you off air just before we started, like I have conversations with people now and they're like, wait, hang on, Nici has 4 children. And the reason I'm like, let's just stop, bold, underline that for a moment is because there's so many times I want to talk about this and we will over these couple of episodes, but when a really incredible launch like this happens, it's so easy, and I've been guilty of it, I think we all have as women, we go, let me collect evidence for all the reasons I could never. You know, again, it's just so common as women. So, you know, you might be listening to this and going, there's just no way I could do this. There's no way I could achieve that. Yeah. And I think building the story, the very true story of you having 4 kids and also coming from earning $33,000 a year and building this in a very short period of time, it's so important for people to hear that, because I've certainly seen like things can change really, really quickly.
My gosh, yes.
And that's really been true for you. And so you started your business, and then talk us through that first kind of 18-month period.
Yeah, I think a really important point is that no one knows where it will go. So, you know, I think I had this fallacy as well, that there are some people that start a business and know that in 2 years I'll be doing $1 million a year or whatever, or that know that this launch is going to be huge. I don't think that's ever true. And if it is, it's very, very rare. So, yeah, I very much had this, you know, I started it. I said yes to that professional development opportunity, had no idea what to charge. So asked AI what to charge, was sick to my stomach when I quoted a price, and then so amazed when they said yes. You know, from that opportunity, it's not as if I ever thought I would be in this position or even get to a position where I would quit my 9 to 5. For a long time, I didn't know what this was. I've got to admit, I'm a pretty multi-passionate person. I think I'm a serial entrepreneur. I had my own line of homemade skincare when I was 12.
Did you? Yes. We've never talked about this. I had Tupperware at 18.
Oh, see, there you go. I sold it at markets. Then I moved into, I did like 3D cakes for a while. I had a kid's clothing line that I hand sewed everything because I couldn't find anything that I wanted for my son. I did like dried floral arrangements for a little bit there.
Excellent.
We've dabbled, right?
So you're like, I'm going to take this somewhere, I don't know where, but I'm going to give it a crack.
Yeah, and I had no idea if it would just remain a side gig or passion. I guess the one thing that felt different this time around was it was the first time that I'd had a side hustle that felt like it itched all the scratches.
Yes.
So, you know, I feel like I'm quite an analytical and creative person. The fact that AI was changing so quickly kind of, you know, ticked all those boxes for me. I had to be creative in the way that I solved problems, but I still got to analyze how it worked the way it did. And then I got to still teach people, which I really, really love, and feel like I was making a difference. So yeah, I did this first professional development event. And then for 8 months, I kept working 9 to 5, which at that time involved driving 3 hours once a week to stay for 3 days to work in Canberra. I live on the New South Wales South Coast. And I'd come back on a Wednesday night, work Thursday, Friday at home, and then do it all again on Monday morning.
Oh, my God. Plus
and
side hustle, plus 4 kids.
Yes, and my youngest was 1 when I started this, or not quite 1 when I started this. So, you know, the first kind of 6-7 months, I didn't really know what it would look like, but I started to receive more speaking opportunities. I started to get referred to more people for professional development. I also dabbled in a bunch of stuff. I mean, anyone will tell you starting a business, less now, but, you know, until very recently, it's kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall. You see what you like, you see what your market likes, you see what you're good at.
Yes.
And then you think, oh, actually I want it to be like this. And then you try that and it turns out you hate that too. Like there's so much rejigging of the pieces. But around 7 months in, it wasn't that, and I think this is an important story to share, I did not feel ready to quit my job. I had no intention of actually quitting my job 7 months in, even though I did 6 figures in the business in the first 6 months. But it wasn't quite secure because my partner is the stay-at-home parent. So I was the sole breadwinner for, at the time, 2 mortgages, 4 kids, all the things, right? I had a lot of responsibility. But what did happen is I got to 7 months in and I thought I can't sustain traveling for half the week for my 9 to 5 as well as traveling to speak, deliver workshops, et cetera, et cetera. So I asked my workplace, oh, do you think I could travel less? Do you think maybe I could come up once a month and stay the whole week but then work from home the rest of the time? And I thought that they would be willing to kind of work with that. And they just flat out said no. So I rang my boss that afternoon and I said, I'm sorry if your answer's no, I actually can't do this. And I quit, and then I had a full-blown panic attack. So like I hyperventilated, burst out crying because I was like, I don't know. Yes, this thing did 6 figures, but I don't know if anyone's going to call me tomorrow.
Yes.
And I now don't have extra money from my side hustle. I now have to make sure my side hustle pays for everything and covers all of the expenses associated with business.
Yes.
But yeah, we went all in.
You know, I think that what you just spoke to is really great because like it's really common when we're starting something to try and create as much safety as we possibly can. And I really believe that as women, if we can create some safety for ourselves, amazing. And you were clearly trying to do that. But there will absolutely be moments. I don't know a single entrepreneur who hasn't had moments where it will feel like, well, this just has to work because there's no other option. And I think that sometimes that can be, it's like the making of you, especially in those early days, being like, well, if I have no choice, I just have to make this work.
Yeah.
And ultimately that level of grit is required even when you have a safety net. And so what was it about that time that you think's really set you up for these couple of years that you had no idea were coming?
Oh my gosh. I think the thing that I underplayed, so my background, I feel like in a lot of ways set me up quite nicely for entrepreneurship, because in academia, you have a lot of autonomy. I never had an office. I never had set hours. I never had a timesheet. I never had a standing meeting with my boss. I got to hire my own staff that worked in my course with me, decided my own budget, launch my own ideas, you know, like float around, go for a long lunch if I wanted and not go back to work, but start early the next day if I wanted. So there was lots of that kind of stuff that overlaps with entrepreneurship that felt like I was deeply practiced at it. And I found that much less jarring than stepping away for your classic 9 to 5. However, the thing I really underplayed was how much pressure you felt at making it all work for everyone around you. At the time, I think I only had like an offshore VA, but you still feel responsible. And it's my income and my family's income and the money for the business and the money to hire someone else. I very much underplayed what that would feel like. And particularly because the early model of my business, I was starting from zero every month. So yes, we were doing well on paper, but it didn't feel like that for me, because the first of every month I'd be like, great, how are we going to make another 20, 30K, whatever the goal was. And then I also, that feeling of loneliness, like no one around you knows what that feels like. Yes, I'd tell my parents I made 20K and they were so proud, but I could tell they didn't really understand what it meant to go and create $20,000 out of thin air.
Yep.
And it's
there
all
was no
you.
shop front.
Yeah, like there's no shop front, there's no guarantee, there's no, you know, as long as you do the work, you'll get the income. You could sit at your desk all day as an entrepreneur and work for 12 hours and have nothing to show for it. It's not the way it works. And that adjustment was trickier than I would have thought for me. Yeah.
So tell us about like what came after that. So, you know, you kicked off and then it was like 18 months of the business really building and you essentially saying yes a lot to create what became a bit of an AI her way machine, which leads us up to like the crossroads where we started working together. So what was that period about? Because again, I think so many people will be able to relate to being like, I built a business, I knew I had to make money, and so I was just gritty and I went after it, and it was almost like what I want came second, because it was more, I have to make money, I have to make this work, I have to ride this wave. Like,
exactly. So yeah, those kind of 18 months before we started working together, yeah, definitely said yes to everything. I mean, there was also a lot of like, if I don't say yes, they won't ask me tomorrow and I'll stop bringing the flavor of the month. Make hay while the sun shines. I recognize that AI is a time and place. So I was gaining this momentum. Yeah, if people came knocking and asked me to talk at their thing, I thought, you know, if I say no, who knows who's in the crowd that might see me, that might be the next kind of paycheck. So it was a bit of a scarcity mindset, even though on paper it was doing really well. I was very busy. You know, there were periods of time, even last year, the second half of last year before we started working together, I was traveling every week. So 2025, I did 78 speaking events. And I live in a small regional town. Like I'm 3 hours.
They weren't there.
Yeah, they were not there. I think I did like one thing for my local women in business community, but like they are not there. I'm 3 hours away from either airport. So it was just every time I was doing one thing, that was 2 nights away from my family. And for the most part, it was enjoyable. But I just kind of thought, this looks amazing on paper. I'm traveling everywhere. I'm staying in these amazing hotels. I'm working with really cool clients. I feel like my work is making an impact, but I recognize that I don't want to do this forever. And I also can't bank on doing it forever, because as you know, like I've got kids, I've got a partner. What happens if one of them gets sick? What happens if one of them has a difficult transition to high school? What happens as my parents age? And I think particularly as women, you start to think about all of that fairly early on. I think other people might have just been like, who cares? You'll figure it out when that happens. But I very much came from it as a place of, I don't want to wait until I'm burnt out and don't have capacity to rethink how this all works. I'd rather think about it while I'm still enjoying what I'm doing for the most part, because then I've got enough energy to rethink things. So yeah, it grew really quickly. I did the first 6 months, we did 6 figures, quit my job. That second year we did around $500,000, but didn't feel like that to me. It didn't feel like I had a lot of space in the business. I felt like I was covering a lot of staff, a lot of hiring errors, a lot of throwing cash around to try and solve problems or to try and work out the ideal business model. The second full calendar year, I think we might have started approaching that 1 million mark. I think we did around 890, that sort of thing. And I just remember sitting down with Tom, my partner, and I'd get so frustrated because I say, like, I'm earning 50, 60, 70 grand a month. Why don't I feel like we have money? Like, why don't I feel like we have options? Why do I feel trapped to starting again every month? Why do I feel like I haven't actually bought us a better lifestyle or more opportunities for our kids? Why do I still feel strapped when one of the kids asks to go to guitar lessons? That shouldn't be how it works. And I don't want to feel like this. I'm not interested in it to feel like this all the time. So yeah, that's where we got to.
When you look back at that time now, just before you got to that moment, if you were to summarize for everyone listening, like what you think you did really well and you'd do all over again, and things that you'd be like, girlfriend, do that differently next time, what would they be?
Tricky.
Like top one of each.
I reckon top one that I'd do again, as much as it got me into that kind of really strapped place, I do think saying yes to everything was good for the time and place. It bought me authority, right? Like, I just said yes to everything, and that meant I built a brand that everyone was like, you know what? You know who does AI well? You know who talks about AI and ethics? You know who talks about gender equity? AI her way, right? I've seen her at this thing. I'm going to recommend you for something else. So I would do that again. The things I wouldn't do again, beyond saying yes to opportunities that brought me authority, I also said yes to opportunities only because they were money. And I would love to say no to those things, to go back in time, because, and everyone will relate to this, but when you say yes to things just because you're worried that no one else will ask and you'll lose the money and you need the income, you end up in scenarios where you're serving people that are not aligned with your business. You're delivering in a way that doesn't feel good. And in the end, you look back and realize you spent way more money delivering on that thing than you actually made off it. And I had a lot of instances of that where I said yes to something, ended up trying to bring on more contractors to do things. Something would get a bit stuck. I knew the client wasn't aligned with how he worked, but you're trying to find a way to say yes to them. And then you get down the road and you realize you've paid staff for 6 months to deliver something you thought would take a week. Everyone's unhappy with the situation and you feel horrible. That's what I would have said no to.
Yeah, it's like you realize the repercussions of building and creating something from that scarcity mindset, right? I can think about seasons in my business where I know that to be true, where I've gotten 12 months after a decision. I'm like, I made that decision in scarcity and now I'm paying the price.
Yeah, I know. And I've also had instances, I'm sure you have too, where I've like gone out to Tom and been like, if I end up complaining about this scenario in 3 months, can you just remind me that I knew that it was going to end like this?
Like, I knew, I did it anyway. Yeah. I thought it was right.
Yeah, should have listened to that gut feeling that told me that this was going to be really painful.
Yes, yes. I think that there's so many people who are listening who'll be able to relate to that feeling. And I think, as you say, it's like saying yes to everything is it. But what I'm hearing is know what end goal looks like for you.
Yeah.
And also it's like trusting, it's almost looking at, well, if I believe that this is going to be big, if I believe that there's opportunity and abundance, how would I then show up? Because you'd still say yes to so much of it, but perhaps there's just some of those really misaligned opportunities, the ones where in your gut you're like, this is not it, that you would reconsider. And perhaps they would have been the things that would have just saved you a little bit of that grape. Again, we've all done this.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. You see it, I certainly see it posted about on like Instagram and stuff so much of, you know, like just double down on the things that you're great at and the things that feel good, because that will ultimately lead you to your goal. Like you know it, but it's so hard to actually keep yourself in that. And to be totally honest, at the very start, you actually don't know what you love and what you're good at.
It's true.
I think you actually need to try, even if you think this is my zone of genius. You may find that in the delivery of it or in the actualization of that business model or that lifestyle, you find that it's not actually anything that brings you joy. So it's funny because I think you always look at people that are further ahead of you in business and you think that they've figured it out. You think that they've got this secret magic bullet. You think that they've got the potion, or they've got the winning formula, or that they've fixed all the things and they've just laid out the plan and it's all going perfectly. And I certainly feel like that too. And what I realize the longer I'm doing this is that no one's figured it out. They just made the mistakes slightly before you did. So like
100%.
No one has the business model figured out by day one. No one knows what the client delivery looks like. No one has the perfect contracts when you start. Like no one actually knows their marketing voice. You're just looking up to all the people that have made those failures. And that's kind of comforting because it's like, all right, well, I'm only a few horrible mistakes away from the next level.
That's why I wanted you to speak to this, because it's so easy to other ourselves, so easy. I even think about things like, you know, sometimes I have moments where I'm like, I don't want to post about my amazing husband, because if other people don't have amazing husbands, they're going to tell themselves stories that they can't create their dream business, or, you know, insert other thing here, which is ridiculous and not on me to hold that. But it's so fascinating how it's such an unconscious thing that we do as women, where we start to go, these are all the reasons I potentially couldn't do this. And I really wanted you to speak to all of that, because I think people will have an opportunity to see, oh yeah, Nici was really tenacious, really gritty, worked really bloody hard, and still does really intentionally to be able to go after this thing. And I can absolutely do that too.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when I look at my history, you know, I'm really lucky that I've come from a very loving, close-knit family. But yeah, that being said, it's like I haven't had smooth sailings. Like I was left out of the blue when my youngest was 9 months old, and my other one he was 22 months, like just under 2 years. Literally just left one morning, and then cut off from all our finances and credit card, and also had our children's savings account taken as well. So, you know, I had 4 years of being a solo mum and really having to make ends meet in the cracks because I couldn't afford daycare either. And so just I'm so grateful for that time now, because it made me flexible and it made me reevaluate how you make things work for you. If I hadn't had been forced into that situation, I would have just gone and got an office job and something stable, because I would have been in a position to do that. But I often, you know, when I talk to young people, I talk about how the adversity will make you, because that scenario forced me to reevaluate the ways that I could make income. It forced me to try and find jobs that suited my lifestyle. And it also, in the personal way, it forced me to reevaluate, okay, that was a really shitty situation. And you know, and in that relationship, I was very much emotionally and financially abused as well. But it made me reevaluate, what was my place in that? What was my role? What do I want to look different? I went very deep down the rabbit hole of like feminism and different types of relationships and how to put your needs first, and the different ways that the patriarchy shapes women to say yes to things they don't actually want to say yes to, or like to put up with different behaviors in their relationship. So all of those moments bring me to now, where I think a lot of people would look at my life and go, yeah, you've got 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. They're all like little and angelic, and you live in this nice place on the coast, and you have this lovely partner that says yes to whatever it is that you want to do and just holds that space for you and makes your business possible. But that's all been super intentional, because I experienced the entirely flip side of that as well. And yeah, for everyone listening, I know that I have a lot of privilege from having other support networks around me, but I have not had this perfect, you know, you just found someone that lifted you up and made your dreams possible and everything was fine for you, and you've just had opportunities handed to you. I could have been defined by being a solo mum. I could have been defined by being a domestic abuse survivor. I could have been defined by literally in academia having the boss of my faculty telling me that I'd never make it and I'd never get up to where my male counterparts are because I'd taken time off to have children. Any one of those moments could have led to me being stuck in that place, and it certainly made me sad and upset and angry. But eventually what I always got to is, well, I just want to prove that they were wrong about me.
Preach, sister. Okay, so you get to this crossroads and
then I call you.
Tell me. Well, tell me what's going through your mind at that time. And let's now talk about what it looked like for you to go, all right, I actually want to build a business for me, because again, I know this, you know this. But it wasn't just like, I know my exact business model that I want and I'm going to go after it. It was like a couple of months in the making. There was a lot to it. And I want to tease that out a little bit and share that full story for people because there was so much to it. So talk us through your thought process.
Yeah, so I got to late last year and like we're just talking about, I think for a lot of women, they need that kind of safety net before they take the risk. So I had a really successful Black Friday sales and I'd had a lot of client work come through in the November. So last November, I made 160 grand that month, which was way beyond what was normal in the year. But I had a huge month, which meant that I had cushion to think, okay, if like this can pay my mortgage for the next couple of months, I've got 3-4 months of buffer room. Now let's take a moment to think about how best I use this money. So that brought me to the point of thinking I hadn't had a business coach for a while. I'd been a bit burnt by one that I had. And I thought, okay, maybe this is the time when I stop doing it all myself. Because what I knew about myself is I was really good at coming up with ideas. I was actually really good at executing the ideas as well. It's just that I did not have the ability to always be so sure that the path I had chosen was the correct one. So I could execute a million things, but then I'd lie in bed at night being like, but maybe I should do it this way.
Do you know what I love about this? And I've actually never told you this, but I loved when we started working together and this process of you were like, I've talked with Claude or maybe it was ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I can't remember where we're at with whether it was Claude or ChatGPT at the time, but you were like, I've worked out, some options. And there was that knowing for you of like, I know how AI is going to support me through this process and I know what I need from a human.
Yes.
And it was so fun to work with you in that intersection where I was like, I'm working with someone who's literally at the forefront of AI and playing with here's the value of AI in this and here's the value of the human interaction and true coaching because it was real true coaching at the start, well, all the way through, but we dip between consulting, strategy, coaching. And I loved that. It was so much fun for me to see, you being at the forefront of that and being like, I know how to coach really well. And I love that you also are using the tools to the peak of their ability and that intersection of bringing both into the experience.
Yeah, and it's right because we have access to all the information. So I could set up AI, and I did, to play like the personas of some of the world's leading business coaches to give me their perspective and their options. But of course, also AI is a positive feedback loop. So every time I'd say to AI, but what about this idea? It'd go, oh, that's a great idea. Like that's definitely got legs. Or I'd be like,
clever.
Or I'd get down a path, and I think I remember saying this to you, like I'd get down a path where I'd mapped everything out. And then I'd go, oh, but what about this piece? And then it would go, oh yeah, you definitely should have this piece. Blah, blah, blah. Here's a whole nother plan that could be an offshoot of this. And so, yeah, I guess potentially different to where some people would come with being like, I don't know what to do next. I kind of came with like, I want to do something else and I have too many options and I need someone to not only help me pick one, but then hold me to the standard was more the thing. Because I'd picked ones before, like I picked them and then I did it for 6 weeks and then I got a bunch of speaking people call me and I had 4 new clients and, a staff member quit or whatever. And then all of a sudden I was stuck in that again with no one to remind me of the big plan or no one to move me towards it and to get me through that. So yeah, I'd done a mastermind call in your group, right?
Yeah,
like that's how we met.
Came in as a guest. I remember sliding into your DMs some point last year because someone had said to me, Nici, she's AI queen. I was like, who are my AI humans? Because we were very big on integrating it early. And I came across you and I instantly knew that we were going to be friends, actually.
Yes.
Like straight away, I was like, she's my gal. And I sent you a message and I knew you were like very booked and busy. And I did the standard, like, this is the budget I have. I don't know if this is right, but insert pitch here about all the reasons you should do it anyway. And I remember you coming back to me and saying to me, look, that is so not my budget, as you would know, but I really want to do this. That sounds really good.
Yeah, and it was like, and I just appreciated that you actually said it because I feel like so many people come to you being like, this is an opportunity for you. And in particularly in my field, because I'm a professional speaker, I'm like, no, this is an opportunity for you. But you were lovely in terms of like, I've got this budget. If that's not aligned, that's completely okay. I don't want you to feel taken advantage of. And I also remember telling you how nice your voice was.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Great.
I was like, oh, she's so posh.
Lived in London for a few years.
Yeah, it's rubbed off. It's great. So I'd known you through that, and I guess I was playing around with like who this business coach advisor might be, and I feel like I had explored. I don't know if I had told you this at all, but I explored a few other business coaches, and the sticking point was actually that their politics were not aligned.
Yes, you did tell me that.
Yeah. So for me, when I was looking for a coach, I was like, I'm only going to respect someone that I would want to be like, right? Not just that you've done the thing, because lots of people have done the thing. I wanted to be aligned with someone that had done the thing and had done it in a way that I would aspire to also do it.
Was congruent with your lifestyle as well.
Yeah, and also, you had Sunny, like, you also had a child. You were also talking about this kind of freedom first approach to this business, this scalable model. But also I knew that our kind of morals and ethics were really aligned. And especially with my brand, I thought it was very important for my brand to only involve people that also upheld the same thing, because otherwise I thought it would be saying, oh, do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
Right?
I just, again, like the bolding and underlining key pieces that you say for people listening, like what you just said was I chose a coach for a values first reason. Yeah. And especially in 2026, this is how and why people are choosing coaches. And so for all of you that are listening to this, and it's certainly been something that I keep coming back to a lot actually, are you showing and demonstrating your values enough? Are you speaking to that enough? If you're not, how can you do it in a bigger way? Because it is the thing that is the final decider for so many people right now.
And it can be really scary to put that out there. I mean, I know that. I've had my fair share of trolling. You can feel really vulnerable, but it is the thing that it's literally how you find your tribe, right? And for me, that was the biggest decision, because I knew there was lots of people that could show me mechanics. And I also knew with my particular way of working that I didn't need so much the exact pieces of the plan. I didn't need like your exact funnel. I kind of knew that I had access to all these tools that would give me all of that information. It was more of that real kind of consulting, coaching, guiding light, and being aligned in what that state looked like, not just how do we reach this metric. It's why do you want to do that, and what is that going to feel like for you? So we had a discovery call, and then I think I said yes fairly quickly. I always like to mull things over, but I'm pretty sure I kind of text you in the next few days and said, yep, cool, let's do this. And then we began our coaching journey together, which was only November last year, by the way.
And the thing that I love most about the last 6 months and actually this is the moment I'm going to talk about the AI piece. So I know if we just talk elephant in the room, this was an AI product launch. And so, for everyone that's listening, you might be like, well, of course, Nici is the moment. This is the moment. And there is, of course, a piece of that that is true. And also, two things. The first is that not everyone in AI is walking around doing a $1.5 million launch right now. In fact, very few people are. And the second is that you were so textbook in, I think about the strategy that we've moved through in the last 6 months. And we have moved through every piece of business foundations so methodically, obviously taking shortcuts here, there, and everywhere, but really intentionally so that the scale was aligned for you, your lifestyle, your, what you wanted the business to look like. And so I really love that. It was like we went from business modeling to product to exact marketing strategy to messaging strategy to launch strategy, and like went through each of those pieces. It was so much fun for me. I remember one day saying to Che, I was like, I feel like I'm using all the tools right now in the most linear way, which never happens. It just so happened for this season of your business, we were so linear in every single piece, which was so fun because of that intentionality that you had.
Exactly.
So tell me what was going through your mind, because it was like that first session, it was like, let's decide on the business model, and we actually started in a different direction.
We did.
So tell us about that.
So I think the business model is probably the part that took us the longest.
Yes.
Which is potentially unsurprising especially given how much technology I use. So it was like once we had that, it was like, okay, here it is.
And this is probably something that I guess I can bring like my background into this. That's not common. A lot of people rush that bit.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, I just want to launch this, or I just want to do this, not thinking about that wider model. So I think that part of what happened after was set up so perfectly from that moment.
Yeah, because we definitely spent the most amount of time in that. And I guess probably the pre-me, like the AI her way of the 18 months before that, it was just going, oh yeah, let's launch that thing. Yes. And I'd launch something in like a week and not really devote myself to it, not put a lot of energy in, and just kind of see how it goes. And then I'd have a different idea the next week. So when I came to you, I really knew that I wanted something more sustainable, and I wanted something that was scale beyond just me. And I also wanted somewhere for all my authority to kind of live, right? And, you know, I wanted this. So my kids and my partner and I do a dream life planning session every year at around Christmas, New Year's. We talk about what our ideal life looks like. And when I had looked at that, there was lots of elements that were able to be true, but not a lot of it was the actual reality of how we lived our week to week and our regular rhythm because of how stretched I was. So I was really coming to you of a moment of clarity, saying like, I want a different way of being, or more importantly, I would like to feel different in my business was the biggest thing. And so we workshopped lots of ideas. We actually, the first kind of route where we really started going down was more around enterprise consulting and having a much higher ticket, more involved kind of consulting model. Because I have enterprise clients, I have education clients, I also have entrepreneur and small business clients. And we could have done any one of those. And I remember you sending me some voicemails, and every time you'd kind of reflect the business model back to me, you'd ask me how that felt.
Does that sound?
Yeah,
how does that feel?
Yeah, exactly. You'd be like, how's that feel? And at
nothing
first,
like a coach asking you how you feel about that.
Yeah, it's like, how did that make you really feel?
To really reflect.
And so I remember, you know, we like explored that method. And at first I thought, yeah, that sounds great, because I can do away with all this busy work. I can focus on, you know, 5 key clients at a time, and I will reach that $1 million, because we were doing like, I think it was 50, 100K a ticket sort of like enterprise consulting item. And when I came to you, I very much came from a place of that's the only way that you make a lot of money without stretching yourself too far, is to charge really high ticket and focus on good quality outcomes for your clients. But I remember when you sent me a voicemail, I was actually making dinner when I listened to it, and you described how it would work and what the consulting agreement would be. And this is all things that we'd workshop, but you were just kind of saying like, yep, this is a summary.
Painting the picture.
Yeah. And you were like, how does that feel? And I felt so anxious. And
not a good feeling.
And I felt my shoulders go tight.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I wasn't even kind of brave enough to say no, because I was too scared about, I don't know what else leads to the goal that I want. So I think I just came back to you and said like, oh, I'm still not totally sure. Maybe I also want to explore being able to serve lots of women. And then I said, you know, when I actually think about my purpose, I'm called AI Her Way for a reason. My goal is to empower women to be part of this technology advancement. If really, you know, time, money, resources were no object, my mission is to make women feel like they're part of this. And so we went through that again. And then I remember you sent another voicemail saying like, okay, you could do a membership model. And my reaction was like, yeah, cool, but I'll never make the income I want. You know, I thought that'll be a nice thing for the world. But, like, you know, these low ticket, high volume options, they're only good for people that have audiences of 350,000, or they're only good for people that have huge mailing lists, or they're only good for people that have a higher ticket offer that runs off the back of that low ticket thing. So it really took me a long time to trust that I could do it. And I remember you saying to me, you absolutely can have a $1 million business off this one product. It's just about volume. I still didn't believe you, but we went with it because that model felt good to me. It felt like the thing that was scalable. It felt like something I could package up my IP into. It felt like something that potentially one day I could sell. It felt like something that would serve the people that I actually really wanted to and would feel good about. Yeah. And then, of course, I can always have speaking and workshops to do that enterprise stuff because I still love it. And I remember, again, you saying to me, you don't have to split yourself. You can be all the identities of Nici. You can still do all the things that bring you joy, but you just have to choose one thing that's the backbone of it. Yeah.
there's so many things I want to reflect back from what you just said. A couple. There are a lot of coaches listening to this, and I just want to highlight the point around, as coach in that scenario, your job is simply to hold belief. And I think that sometimes we really forget that. But hearing you reflect that back to me, I'm like, that's so important to do in that moment. Just hold the belief of possibility. And the second thing that, again, I think really good coaches do this. So many of you listening do this, and it's the reminder of how important it is to really showcase the pros and cons of every model. Yeah. Because ultimately, like, your job is to just put it all on the table and talk about options, and then really present those options and take the time in that. And again, that process was so key, and you were so willing, like, to just go there with every single option and really consider it. And you move fast, but there's a difference between moving fast when you know how to move versus slowing down really intentionally for the right next step. And you did that so well. And I remember being so in awe of the way that you were like, I'm going to sit with this for a moment, or let me just be with this for a minute. You'd come back so quickly on some things, but the things that really mattered, it was like, I just need to process this, play with this. And that was when I started getting a lot of like, this is going to be big. I could just feel from the way that you were setting things up so intentionally, and looking in, that something is going to work when you can see somebody being so strategic so early on.
Well, certainly in those days, I felt very slow. Because I do move at 1,000,000 miles an hour, as most entrepreneurs do, right?
Thankfully, it was like December at this time. It was the ultimate part of the calendar year to be like, we're slowing the business. So it worked really well.
Yes, but I remember feeling quite slow. I remember feeling a bit frustrated with myself that I couldn't quite get there. And I knew the feeling I was chasing of that confidence around a decision, and I knew that I was choosing the new path forward, and I knew that I was done with just trying stuff. Like, of course, we're always going to iterate, we're always going to evolve, but that feeling of like, yeah, I'll launch something tomorrow and just see how it goes, and maybe it'll become a thing. I was sick of not feeling like I'd put my energy where it really belonged and behind something that I could feel really proud of because of how much energy I gave it. But it was a really scary decision at that point in time, because I was like, if I do this, what if it doesn't work, right? Or what if I do this, but actually the high ticket thing would have been way better and easier? Or what if I do this and then the corporates stop calling me because I'm just a girl that does a thing for other women, right? Like, what if I get painted into this archetype and it erodes away the authority that I've worked really hard for in these other avenues? Or, what if I do this and it's not a great product and then I sell it and people are like, that was a terrible experience. All of those things, I think, again, when you see someone that has done a thing, you assume that they've felt a certain way about it without recognizing that they are very human, just like you. No one has a magic 8-ball. I didn't know how it was going to go. I still don't know what next year or the year after, like, no one has certainty around that. So, I really had to kind of sit with those feelings. And I remember a lot of that. And in my head, it felt like it took quite a length way into the start of the year before I really, really kind of wrapped my own head around the concept and around what we were chasing and around that bigger goal. It really took me to kind of probably February before I was like, yep, that's what we're doing, and we're just going to do it and see. And that's why I got you, Ellie. I was like, I just want someone else to say, here's the goal, and until we actually flesh this out, stop doing all the other things.
And again, no one talks about that process, because so often when you scale, there will be a dip that comes beforehand, because the process of scaling is trading off time or money or both to really intentionally go, I'm going this way and it's going to look like this thing. And you sat in that where you were like, I have to build this new product. I have to work out exactly what this looks like. I remember us having conversations where you were like, I need to say no to a lot of speaking gigs, and holding that middle ground. And you would say things to me like, I keep saying to Tom, this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to look like. And I could see you like brainwashing yourself in the best way of like, I know this is good. I know this is good. I know this is good. But again, for everyone that's listening, like, I want to tell you all, because I'm like the most proud human of this person in front of me, that Nici is so special and magical and amazing. And I also want you to know that she feels everything that you do too.
My gosh, yes. Like, I knew I had to clear space in the calendar. I also knew that at that point in time, 90% of our revenue came from me saying yes to things, right? And I knew that if the business was ever going to look different, I had to put time and energy into making that happen at the downfall of saying no to things and not making money, but also facing that fear of I've said no, so they won't ask me again. So I'm losing that authority piece. I'm losing the fact that I'm the hot thing of the minute and no one else will call next week. So, you know, I know around kind of December, January, having a conversation with Tom, and we'd been fortunate enough that, you know, I'd always put a little bit extra into the mortgage, right? So at this point we had a bit of a buffer in our mortgage. It was just like, yeah, that may be a situation that we get to, but I have a plan. And, you know, I'd given us a 3 months. So I was like, if we have to take 3 months of living costs out of there, that's the runway I give myself to make sure this works. And, you know, are we comfortable with that? Because that's what I've become comfortable with in my head. Because otherwise I knew that I'd just chase the number. And everyone loves the endorphin rush. Well, maybe not everyone. I love the endorphin rush of sales. I love the endorphin rush of saying yes. I love the endorphin rush of chasing that next number. And I really had to coach myself to be okay with not receiving that endorphin rush in the interim.
Yeah. And hold firm.
Yeah. And just keep reminding yourself that there's a bigger destination and you just have to get through the murky middle. Yeah.
So we're going to do that really annoying thing for the listeners where we're literally going to stop this episode here. And I really, really wanted you to take us through the setup and the decision, which you've done. So what we're going to do is next week, we're going to go really deep on the specifics of the launch. But between now and then, you are going to have your next workshop.
I am.
So can you just talk us through that workshop and direct everyone where to sign up for that?
Absolutely. So we are running a workshop. We're going to go for 90 minutes through this launch process, much more around how AI and our systems help support that launch. So the really big thing that we will get into is just how small my team is, and also the fact that during this launch I was traveling overseas and having a holiday and working, but I was elsewhere engaged. So I did not have all of my time, effort and energy going into this launch. So in that 90-minute workshop, we're really breaking down how these systems supported that launch process, how we came up with this design of it, but then how we delegated the actual execution to a lot of our AI agents. And we're able to do something far beyond our wildest dreams because we had all of these systems in place. So that's happening on the 24th of, we are in June now, aren't we? Yeah, 24th of June. But if you sign up to it, it's completely free to come. If you sign up, you'll also get a replay for the next 48 hours, or you can come along live. That's obviously the preference. You can grab a spot either by signing up to our newsletter, going to my website, aiherway.com.au, or you can head to my socials on Instagram and comment 1.5M on pretty much any post that's going around at the moment, and you'll receive the registration link.
Perfect. And if you're getting this after that workshop's out, you'll get redirected to a waitlist or next step. So go ahead, do that anyway. Make sure that you're getting all of Nici's information because you'll be able to hear about what's coming next.
Amazing.
So good. All right. We will be back next week. In the next episode, we are going to talk more about the details of the launch itself, and not just the launch, like as in a launch, but like full program business model rebuild, really from the ground up.
Yeah, we've got all the numbers. I've pulled all the data around it because I am a data scientist. So we're going to go through each component of it, really kind of everything that we put into play to run this process and all the results from it too.
I'm so excited. See you next week.